Hey, what's up, Rev? It is so good to be with you guys tonight. I am so glad that you made it to church. Hopefully you didn't get into a car accident or anything bad happened because there's snow on the ground again in April. Come on. Someone just said, welcome to Minnesota here at Lino. The truth is spoken. Hey, listen, I'm so glad that you're here. I have a small confession to make, as I often do. If ever I'm feeling stressed, if ever I'm feeling worried, it's normally because I feel stupid. And I feel stupid like a lot. Because it's kind of a part of my personality. Part of my personality is I'm very curious. I have a lot of questions, and I re-ask those questions, and I re-ask those questions, and I'm constantly looking for new things. And I really love that about my personality, but there's a frustration there too, because it means that I consistently feel like I don't have enough or the right kind of information, and that makes me feel very uncomfortable. It makes me feel very stressed out and very annoyed. But thankfully, there have been many people in my life that have helped to silence those worries. And they've been like the best kind of people. Like, do you know those kind of people who when they walk in the room, you're just instantly like, oh man, I'm so glad you're there. Like that one coworker at your job that doesn't totally annoy you, but you kind of like, and they walk in, you're like, yes, you're here for my shift, awesome. Or you're at school, and you're just at school, but then you have you're assigned a class with your best friend, and you're like, this class is about to be nuts. We're gonna learn nothing in here. It's gonna be awesome. But you know what I'm saying? I imagine it's how people feel when Tom Hanks or Beyonce walk into the room. You're just glad that that person is there, right? Not that that's happened to me, but I just imagine that's what it feels like. One of the people in my life that was that and that is that for me is a guy named Scott Smith. And Scott he was a former teacher of mine in high school. He later became my boss, and he's now my friend. I know it's crazy. I'm actually friends with one of my high school teachers. It's a crazy world that we live in. But he was my boss when I was a high school Bible teacher right after college. And his job was to kind of give me directives and guide me through my job. And a part of that was he would come into my classroom and he would take in one of my lessons, which normally would totally freak me out because I would be constantly thinking about, man, what am I saying? How is it sounding? Is it even true? All of those things would have normally been going through my mind. But when he was there, I just kind of felt at peace. I just had a confidence and assurance that he was there because a lot of the time he was able to give insight and information that I didn't have. Many times he was able to answer questions that I didn't know the answers to. And he always had this ability to never overpower me in the moment, but to empower me by helping me in ways that I didn't even know I needed to be helped. One of the best ways that he did this was when he gave me feedback after the class. So once the class would leave, he would pull me aside, and what he wouldn't do is he wouldn't tell me everything that I had done wrong, even though I had done plenty of things wrong because I was a dumb new teacher right out of college, okay? And he also didn't he didn't remind me of all of the things that I didn't already know, even though he could do my job better than I could. What he would do instead is he would identify problems. He would find little areas where things weren't quite right, or I didn't explain that well, or I missed that question, and then he would tell me a story of his own career in his classroom where he experienced a similar thing and he kind of found a way through it. And I was so grateful in that moment to just have a guide, to just have somebody who was helping me figure out all of the questions that come from a new job right out of college. And one of the reasons I was so thankful for that is because I think for a lot of my life, I've allowed the fog, I've allowed my worries or my anxieties or my stresses to get in the way and kind of rob me of rest, kind of take away my peace, my contentment. And when that happens, it's kind of like this slow fade that happens in my life. So suddenly, I'll begin to replay and elevate the worst parts of my personality until that's all that I can see of myself. And then things start to kind of break down from there where things feel impossible. Small things begin to feel impossible. And when everything feels impossible, I'm left feeling confused and not sure where to go from there. And it's in those moments that I am desperately needing a guide. I'm needing somebody to tell me which way to go, which way to take so that I can find a better way forward. And I wonder how many of you are here tonight across all of our campuses that have felt that way. Maybe you're there now, where in your life, you just don't know what to do next. Maybe you're thinking about what happens after high school for you, and you're just not sure. Maybe it's a tough situation with your friend group, and you're not sure how to navigate it. Or maybe it's just feelings of sadness that you can't shake, or worries that just don't seem to go away. And you're just waiting for and looking for a guide, someone to show you a way out. Well, friends, what I want to do with our time tonight is I want to talk about Jesus. And you might be thinking like, yeah, obviously this is church. That's kind of what we do. That's true. But what I want to say to you is that he is our guide. Jesus is the one that we can and we should look to as our guide through the fog to a life beyond it. What I want to do tonight is I want to give you two ways that Jesus is able to lead us through the fog in our life into a better and more powerful and hopeful future. And the first way that Jesus does this is that Jesus works with us. So when I was in grade school, I had this crazy but really cool gym teacher. His name was Mr. Johnson. And he had this very old school philosophy about gym where you could only do exercises that were from the 50s, okay? And so one of the things that we would do is we climbed a rope. Do you guys still do this? We climbed a rope as a part of our exercise. And it was a super tall rope, really tall ceiling. And at the very top of the rope was a little bell. And the deal was if you could climb all the way to the top of the rope and hit the bell, you never had to climb the rope again, which all of us wanted to do because climbing the rope sucked, okay? Your hands would get all torn up and you would you would get halfway up and then the rope would start to move back and forth and you would lose balance and you would fall. I can't believe no kid broke his neck in this. I mean, it's probably illegal today to do this. But that's what we did. So one day I was in a class of all dudes and they were all jabronis. Do you know what I'm saying? They could do everything themselves and they all played sports and they were just the worst. I mean, they were fine, but they were the worst. And one day we come to the gym class and Mr. Johnson's like, yo, we're gonna do the rope today. We're climbing the rope today. And he was like, who wants help? Does anyone want help with this? And all of the jabronis were like, we don't need it. Don't need help. Help is dumb. It's for the weak. And I'm literally at the end of the line ooh, Mr. Johnson, me. I want help, Mr. Johnson. I don't ever want to do this again. Will you please help me climb the rope so I never have to climb this stupid thing ever again? Why do you make us do this in the first place? And he was like, all right, Brandon, you go first. So I go over there and he was like, just start climbing the rope. So I started climbing the rope, and I got a little bit less than halfway before the danger zone, before you lost balance. And what he did was he got to the end of the rope, and he grabbed it, and he pulled it to the ground, and he put his foot over it, and it made the rope tight from the floor all the way to the ceiling. And suddenly, I didn't have the problem of moving back and forth. I wasn't fighting against the rope anymore. I could just climb. And I climbed all the way to the top, and I rang the bell, and I came back down, and I looked at those jabronis, and I was like, suckers! In your face. I don't have to do this anymore. But I would have never been able to do it without his help. And the reason I tell you that story is because that is the kind of help that Jesus offers to us. It's a help that comes alongside us and helps us achieve something that we thought would be impossible. In Matthew chapter 11, which is in the New Testament, it's the first book in the New Testament. Jesus has this teaching where he invites us into a different kind of perspective on what it means to go beyond what we thought possible. This is what he said in Matthew chapter 11. He said, come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. And then he goes on to say this, let me teach you because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Now, one of the things I love about Jesus here is he talks about gaining and finding rest in the context of doing work, actual manual labor work here. See, for us, I think for many of us, we tend to think of rest and work as two separate things, right? Work is what we do at school and at our jobs and maybe even in our relationships. And rest is what we do in front of a screen until our eyeballs fall out. You know what I'm saying? They're two separate things. But Jesus is saying, no, that's the wrong way to think about it. They should be integrated because when rest and work are separated, your work becomes stress and your rest isn't actually rest. And so what Jesus is saying is like, you've got to change your thinking. And if you want to figure out how to go farther than you ever thought possible, if you wanted to achieve more and not lose your soul in the process, Jesus says, come to me and I will teach you. And then Jesus says this weird phrase, I will put my yoke upon you. Now listen, he's not talking about an egg yolk, okay? That's not the kind of yoke he's talking about. This yoke is an old school, an ancient form of like serious farming technology, okay? What they would do is it was this harness, and you would take 2 bulls or 2 steers or 2 cows, and you would put them under this harness, and that harness would funnel their power into one forward movement. So what that meant was that you would be able to be more efficient and more effective in all of your planting. And the image here that Jesus is trying to use to try to teach us is when you are yoked with me, we work together. It's a side-by-side thing where I'm coming alongside of you and what you're trying to achieve, and you're not going off by yourself thinking you can do it on your own. On the one hand, it takes us saying and acknowledging that we don't have things figured out, that we need help in certain areas in our life. And then on the other hand, it's Jesus saying, I am right there with you. I am beside you every step of the way. And my help won't only push you forward, it will help you do something that you never thought possible, which is to move beyond the fog of anxiety or depression or worries or doubts. Because we do that with him. And so the first way that Jesus leads us and guides us beyond the fog in our life is by working alongside of us, is working with us. And the second way that Jesus does this is this. Jesus overcomes. So when I was in high school, I was on the football team for 4 months, and then I quit because I was bad at it, obviously. But I was on the football team, and the reason I joined the football team is because we had the best coach. Now, I don't mean the best in that, like, he was very strategic and very good with athletic stuff because we were like a super bad football team. What I mean is like he made us as a team believe in each other. He would fire us up before, during, and after every single game. We were bought into what this guy was wanting to tell us. He would do this thing before every game where he would bring us all together and he would have us close our eyes. And he would say, imagine this game that you're about to play, you've already won. Imagine yourself celebrating the victory of a game that you haven't played yet because it's already won. And then he would have us open our eyes. And he would say, okay, now how is that going to change the way that you play tonight? And then he would answer it for us. He would say, when you get knocked down, you're going to get back up again because you know you're going to win. When you are losing by many points, you are not going to give up because you know in the end, you are going to win. When you are experiencing pain and difficulty and confusion on your team, you will bound together because you know in the end, you are going to win. See, I think for many of us, we live our lives, we play the game of our lives as if we have already lost. I think that's easy to do. We get caught up in the fog and we tell ourselves, man, this sadness is never going to leave. This drama, it's never going away. This difficulty, it's going to stay with me forever. And then we shrink our lives to this existence where the future is cloudy and we can't see what's coming up next. And so we think we'll just stay here. But Jesus invites us to envision a future where we've already won. In John, which is another book in the New Testament, there's a story about Jesus. It is his most famous story. Jesus is captured by the Roman government and the Jewish officials of the day, and they decide collectively that they're going to kill him. And they decided they're going to do this by nailing his hands and his feet to some planks of wood, which are a cross, and then they'll hoist him up and they'll leave him to die until he hangs to death by his hands and his feet. And the story in John goes like this, that while he was up on that cross, Jesus asked for something to drink because he was thirsty. And the guards who were watching him gave him vinegar on a sponge to insult him. In every way, Jesus is losing. And while he was there and he had tasted the vinegar on his lips, right after that, he says 3 important words that change everything. Let's check it out. This is what Jesus says. He said, "It is finished." And then he bowed his head and he gave up his spirit, which is another way of saying that he died. Now, something is going on here that you can't see in English. Just hang with me. This story was originally written in ancient Greek. And Greek and English have a lot of differences, but one of their major differences is how they approach verb tenses. I'm gonna get really nerdy for a second, but hang with me, okay? In English, we have past and present verb tenses. And in Greek, they have past and present, but they also add a future tense to their verbs. And they have a very specific kind of future tense that's called the pluperfect tense, okay? And this tense is almost never used. It's very rarely used. And when it is used, it's used very intentionally. And the reason it's not used very often is because it's used to describe a very complex idea. The idea is that the pluperfect tense describes an event that happened in the past, but its effects are felt all the way through the future. The image you should have in your mind is if you have a pebble above a very still pond, and you drop that pebble into the pond and it breaks the surface of the pond, that's your event. That's what happens. But then over time, the ripples of that event start going out from the pond and the landscape is changed by what happened. And that's the tense that Jesus used when he was on the cross and he said, "It is finished." So what that means is that Jesus said, "It is finished now, it is finished tomorrow, it is finished the next day and the next century and on and on and on." And so what Jesus was saying when he was on the cross dying was, I am creating a new future of possibilities. Jesus was showing us and signaling to us that his death would not be in vain and it would not be wasted. His death was bigger than that moment. When Jesus said it is finished, he wasn't just talking about his death. He was talking about the death that we experience when we walk into the fog, the death of our contentment, the death of our peace, the death of our rest, the death of our hope and joy and our emotional wellness. Jesus was putting to death the idea that our struggle or our difficulties or our fog or even death itself is all there is. See, when Jesus was on the cross and he said, "It is finished," he was saying, even though I'm dying, I'm not losing, I'm overcoming. And the good news for you and for me is the victory that Jesus won that moment on the cross is our victory too. And the reason for that is because Jesus didn't stay dead. 3 days later, he rose from the grave. And when he walked out of that grave, he opened the door to a new kind of life that exists beyond worries, beyond pain, beyond suffering, beyond anxiety, beyond depression. Jesus opened a doorway to possibilities of a new life. In that moment, Jesus won the game for you and for me. And then he invites any who are willing to cross over what he overcame and enter into his peace. Jesus himself said it best when he said this. He said, "I have told you these things so that you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world." Friends, in this life, in your life, you will have trouble. You will walk straight into the fog. You will have difficulty and pain. You will have suffering and sickness. You will be in it. But the good news of Jesus is he is saying that that is not the end of the story ever. Jesus is showing us that the fog doesn't win in the end. That no matter how tough it is now, no matter how difficult, no matter how confusing, it doesn't win in the end. Jesus does. And so Jesus invites us, he guides us, he reminds us to not get lost in the fog, to not let our sadness or our worries win. But he encourages us to put our hope and our faith and our trust in him, and he invites us to walk in his overcoming victory. Because friends, the game has been won, and Jesus is asking us to live like it. And so tonight, the way that we're going to do that is we're going to close out this series. We're going to close out this night by taking communion together, which is why you have those little cups with you right now. And these cups are supposed to be a reminder to us, a signal to us. The wafer is supposed to represent Jesus' body that was broken on that cross. The grape juice is there to remind us of the blood that Jesus spilt on the cross. But way more than that, this is for us to remember what Jesus did, not just dying, but coming back. Jesus won the game, and he brings us into his victory. And so when we take communion tonight, we take it victoriously over brokenness and shame and anxiety and depression. We take it because we live into the victory that Jesus did. And we take it seriously, too. Because what Jesus did, he took it seriously. And listen, here at Revolution, we have a lot of freedom here. There's a lot of openness in this place. But maybe you're here tonight and you're not following Jesus. This Jesus thing is a new thing to you. Church is a new idea to you. First of all, I want to say you are always welcome in our doors. Every time you are welcome here. But if you have not committed your life to Jesus yet, then just wait on this. Wait till you're ready to make that decision. Maybe it's tonight. You're ready right now to give your life to Christ. If so, talk to your small group leader, talk to an adult, talk to the pastor at your campus, talk to a leader at your campus. They would be more than happy to have that conversation with you. But if you're not ready for that yet, just hold off on this. But if you're here tonight and you've said, yep, I want to walk into the victory that Jesus has for me. I want to celebrate and remember all that Jesus has done for me. Then we're going to share this cup together. And we're going to remember Jesus. And we're going to allow it to change how we view the fog and change how we view ourselves. Because we know that the battle and the game has been won and the victory is ours. So the way that we're going to do this is I'm going to read you the words of Jesus because Jesus started this tradition. He's the one who made it happen first. I'm going to read you his words, and then after we read his words, we're going to take the wafer first, and then we're going to drink the grape juice together. And then after that, we're going to sing a song at all campuses to just celebrate what God has done. So let's take communion together now. And Jesus took bread and he gave thanks and he broke it. And he gave it to them, his disciples, saying, "This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." Let's unpack the wafer. Take a moment, just eat it together. And then in the same way, after the supper, he took the cup, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you." Let's take a moment, unpack the cup. We'll take it together. If you would, Rev, once you're finished with that, just stand at all campuses and we're going to pray together as we close out this series and we close out this night. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for loving us enough to do what we can't, to go where we couldn't, to endure what was ours, and to partner yourself with us because of your great love for us. Jesus, I stand here today so grateful for the victory that you won for me and for the victory that you won for all of these students and all of these volunteers and everyone who can hear my voice tonight. Jesus, I want to walk in victory, man. I want to believe that the game has been won and that I am playing not to try to win, but because I've won. And I pray that the students that are here tonight would have that same attitude, that they would have a desire and an eagerness to celebrate you and to follow you through the fog, through their difficulty, through their pain, and that they would find rest for their souls because they put themselves in partnership with you and work alongside of you. God, thank you for all that you do for us, for all that you've done for us. And Jesus, we thank you for your sacrifice as we celebrate that you are not dead, you are alive and victorious. So Jesus, we trust you and we love you. In Christ's name, amen. All right, thanks, Rev. Let's sing this last song together.